So our first question, Lisa Mooney, we are in the beginning of HD, and I have heard a lot of references with changes between couples. I worry that my husband will need more than I can provide. How do I start conversation with him without scaring him?
Thank you, Katie, for offering this forum, because these are great questions, often questions that people feel too vulnerable to ask in clinic or when they're in front of their HD team. So I'm glad that they have an opportunity to ask them here and we can discuss it. It is hard to discuss some of these things. So thank you, everyone who were brave enough to send the questions in. First, I'm going to say this. We as social workers or HD providers, we throw lots of information at you and we try to inform you and educate you and try to prepare you for what's coming in the future. I think by doing that, we also sometimes terrify you and scare you. Remember that HD is a slow progressing disease. Some of these conversations are going to be a process. Yes, relationships will change over time with HD, without HD, they change over time, but you do have time to adapt and adjust. What I would say is, in my experience with Huntington's and with other disease processes, opening up the conversation is the best thing to do. It usually doesn't scare anyone. People are usually relieved, because my guess is in this scenario, your husband is probably feeling that way too, or feeling like he doesn't want to be a burden. That's what a lot of our HD persons tell us. So he's probably scared as well, but also doesn't necessarily know how to bring it up to you. So I think just opening the conversation and saying, hey, we have this diagnosis, we're in this together, I want to support you. Can we talk about a few things, or can we talk about one thing now, or can we set a date to talk about what we need to? And just sharing your feelings and sharing your expectations and setting up that things are going to change and adjust, and we will adapt and we will get through this together. And there are going to be times that are difficult, and there are going to be times that are joyous, and we forget about Huntington's disease. And there's no one way, remember, to do it. So everyone does it their way. And please be confident that what you choose to do for your family and how you choose to support each other through this, and that's what's most important. And whether someone else in the HD community, if they do it differently, that's okay. Every relationship looks different. Support is different. The outcome is different. Sometimes people can stay home and can be cared by their family members up until the very end. Sometimes it gets too challenging depending on the family dynamics, and all of that is okay.
Yeah. And I think maybe this is where support groups really come into, because a lot of times within these caregiver support groups and things, there's been people that have already gone through this, and they can help you know like how they went through the changes of intimacy, the different ways they went and made there's different accommodations, there's different ways to be intimate. And it's not just physical sex or something like that, right? There are many ways that intimacy happens. So a lot of times your community, maybe in these support groups, can help you through on how they change too. I remember the first time I found out another caregiver didn't sleep in the same bed as their husband. And I went, oh, I haven't slept in the same bed with Mike for 3 years. Okay, I'm normal. Like, I'm normal. It's not that I don't love him or I don't want to share a bed with him. But a lot of us don't, because it was very challenging with his Korea to sleep with him. I'd get socked in the face in the morning. He would sleep still, and then in the morning the build up, and I would end up with it.
And I think you make a good point. I think connecting with your HD community, because those are the people that are walking in your shoes, shared similar experiences. And I do think that we live in a society where people do judge, oh, you're supposed to sleep in the same bed as your spouse or your significant other. That doesn't work for everybody. I just saw there was some new show that there's some spouses now that they don't even stay in the same house and they look very happy. It works for them. If you don't sleep in the same room, you don't sleep in the same room. That doesn't mean you don't love that person or you can't have human connection with them or intimacy if that's what you want or whatever. Please don't let other people's judgments or definitions of what they think a good marriage is or a good relationship is influence you. If what you are doing is working for you and your spouse, that is okay.
Lisa, you've probably seen this where someone makes a change that they think is going to be terrible, like sleeping in a different room or moving a person with HD to an assisted living, and then it actually turns out to be much happier and healthier for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you've seen it too, where it's hard to place your loved one. It's hard to have them go live somewhere else. But at the same time, if they're living in your house, you are their everything, right? You're their spouse, you're their nurse, you're their cook, you're their toothbrusher. I don't know the right language, but you do all of those things for them. Whereas if they go into a facility, now you have nurses and aides that can take care of their personal care needs, and you can go back to being their spouse, and you can hold their hand and watch a movie together, or hold their hand and look at a photo book together. So sometimes you can't wear all the hats, and it's important to know that there's resources out there so that you don't have to wear all the hats.
Dr. Duffy, my husband and I want to have a baby eventually, but I haven't tested and I'm not ready quite yet. If I am to get pregnant, can I have the baby tested without being tested myself?
So this is a pretty sensitive topic. I will acknowledge that. There's a couple ways of going about this. If one has not gotten pregnant yet, there are options such as pre-implantation genetic diagnoses, where someone decides to go through IVF, in vitro fertilization, and they take their eggs and get their eggs tested and make sure that the egg that they have implanted does not have the expanded gene. And they don't have to find out whether they have an expanded gene or not. So they can have a non-expanded egg with sperm placed and undergo pre-implantation genetic diagnoses without finding out their gene status. That is an option. However, if you get pregnant without that process, you get pregnant naturally, as they say, and you want to have the baby tested to see if they're gene expanded, by nature, if you find out that baby is gene expanded, it will out you. So you will find out that you're gene expanded. There's no way to test baby and not you, because baby has to get the expansion from you, assuming that dad is not a carrier. So there is not a way of finding out whether baby is expanded without finding out you're expanded at the same time. Now, if you choose to undergo genetic testing while pregnant, you will find out your gene status and baby's gene status. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? Because now you've just diagnosed a baby with likely an adult onset disease, and we don't do that, right? We allow children and young adults to make the decision to test or not to test on their own. We do genetic testing in pregnant women often for different genetic diseases because it gives them the information to make a decision. So what we recommend is, if you do genetic testing while pregnant, make sure it's because you would make a certain decision, not because you are diagnosing an adult onset disease in a baby. There's all sorts of personal feelings around abortions for genetic causes. So it's a very sensitive topic. People get tested for trisomies when they're pregnant and make decisions to have an abortion or not to have an abortion. So you just have to be equipped with the knowledge and decision-making around that.
A question I have is, if so this would be potentially, like you're talking about, a dual diagnosis. How do you, yes, some people will do it. Do you think that some people wouldn't? They wouldn't feel comfortable when they went to the doctor, their neurologist, their team wouldn't feel comfortable doing a dual diagnosis and say no? Or is that something that's commonly practiced?
It's not commonly practiced. This would be a very rare situation. And how I would go about it would be, if you got tested and then it would be because you would make a decision about the pregnancy. If you would carry out the pregnancy no matter what, then this is not the time to test.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. That you should go through this pregnancy. We should readdress your gene status at a later date when you're in a better kind of psychological place to process this. And then we can address your gene status. But if going through this genetic testing is not going to change whether you carry this pregnancy out or not. This is not the time.
Yeah.
It's the time to be pregnant, enjoy your pregnancy, have a baby, and address your gene status some other time. That's how I go about it.
So I saw the comment, Lauren, about Down syndrome. That's a different situation in my view. So Downs, the child will have differences and disabilities from birth. And some people will test for Downs, choose to keep the baby, but having the information being prepared ahead of time is incredibly helpful in many emotional, practical, many levels. Here, as Sasha said, you have an adult onset disease, most likely, since most HD is going to be adult onset. You're not using the information to help prepare your home and the rest of your family for something right away. You're taking away that child's chance to choose whether he or she wants to be tested as an adult.
And I think the big thing about this question that when it came in, I was like, oh, it's really wasn't about finding out the gene status. It was about this, are you ready to be, it's like a dual diagnosis. It's two people being diagnosed. And it was like, it's one thing if you've been diagnosed and you want to go through this process, but the other thing that I was like, how would doctors even be willing to do that? I don't know. But Sasha said this would be a rare case.
Yeah, and the people who choose to get predictive genetic testing are fewer than 10% of people at risk than with Huntington's disease. That means the vast majority of people don't want to know their gene status, right? They want to live their life. They want to live it normally. They want to grow up. They want to go through school. They want to have their friendships and their relationships. They want to have their jobs and have kids and deal with it if it comes down the pipeline for them. And by testing a kiddo, born or not, you take away that right of deciding for them, and you take away the right of living, quote, normal life for many years, decades. So we have to think about those implications.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm just going to add, sometimes these questions come because the judgment from our family members and or outside people are influencing that you should be worried about this. If this is something that you are truly concerned about, I'm really glad you asked the question. If this is something that you're feeling put up against a wall because of other people's opinions, remember, starting a family is beautiful. It's joyful. Enjoy it. We never know what's going to happen when this DNA, the sperm DNA and the egg DNA meet. Things happen, Down syndrome, the trisomies, a whole slew of things can happen. And I will tell you, in 15 years, I'm older than that, but 15 years in HD, 49 years on the planet, no one has said they wish they weren't born. No one has ever told us that, oh, I wish my parents would not have had me. So it's perfectly okay to bring a child into this world if you want to bring a child into this world and be a parent. And please don't let the judgment of other people who probably have no knowledge of Huntington's disease or the complexities or anything influence you not moving forward with what you want to in life.
And Lauren just made the comment also, Lisa, about being limited by finances. When you have people in your family saying, just do IVF, just do non-disclosing IVF, it is expensive and insurance may not cover it. There is a foundation that will have a limited number of scholarships for this for HD families, but that's something for which you have to plan very far in advance because the scholarships are limited and they go very quickly. It's not a spur of the moment thing. It can also be hard to find a facility that does non-disclosing IVF. In our area, not all fertility centers will do non-disclosing.
Dr. Anderson, my daughter used to love to go to parties with us. Now she goes, but she doesn't engage, and it doesn't seem like she wants to even be there. Is there anything I can do to help her have fun again?
That is a fantastic question. We hear this all the time in different settings, parties, sports events, things with other people around, and someone does not seem to want to be there. My first comment would be, have you asked your daughter? Have you said to her during the event quietly, how's it going? You want to be here? Should we go soon? And see. And I say that because she may not think at the moment to tell you whether she's having a good time or not. People with HD sometimes lose some of their expressive look on their face. So she may not look like she's having a good time, even though she is. It may be hard for her to get her words together and participate in conversations, but she loves being there and seeing what everyone's wearing and what they're doing. That's my first thought in this. If she's not having fun, if she says, I don't want to go to these anymore, ask her why. So is it overstimulation? Some people, not everyone, but some people with HD have a really hard time being in an environment with lots of noise and chaos, like a family birthday party with 15 kids running around with noisemakers and everything. If it's a family event or people, is there a side room with a couch or a bed where she could maybe go take a break now and then? Or is it a situation where overstimulation is too much and it's better to just have maybe a couple people over for coffee at your house as opposed to big family gatherings like this? But I wouldn't assume just because someone looks like they're not having fun that they're not having fun, because they may actually be able to enjoy things even if they're no longer bubbly and participating. The other question is, how are people at the party interacting with her? Are they? Again, this depends on your loved one. Does she appreciate that people will maybe come up and pull her aside and ask her, how are you doing? I love what you're wearing, things like this. Or is it too much to have different people in her face like that? And again, it's actually overstimulation and too many people interacting with her.
That's a really good point. I never thought about that. And I know this family, and it seems like she would be upset if she was no longer going. I can see, even though, because I've seen the changes too, but I think that it would make her sad if she wasn't involved and wasn't going places and doing things.
Maybe she wants to take a break. Maybe she's someone who just shuts down when there's too much going on and it's uncomfortable. Or maybe she just shuts down, but it's not uncomfortable. She's just taking it all in, right?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.